Mark, if you only had 1 minute to give music artists the best music marketing advice you possibly could, what would you say? 1 minute on the clock.
I would say that every single dollar you spend into music marketing should be the dollar towards acquisition of a fan. Every single dollar needs to be making sure that you're acquiring a real fan that's actually going to stream your music, purchase your merchandise, and show up to your shows. Any other money being spent is a waste unless you can actually communicate with them directly and get them to take any action from there that you need them to take.
Bam. Holy crap. That might be the fastest answer yet. You didn't even need 30 seconds. That was a great answer. Now, jumping off that point, like, what would you say are some of the most effective uses of budget? Like, I guess, and I'm guessing a lot of you're talking about like running ads in certain situations, but like what kind of ad platforms, if there's ads, or what kind of like, where would you suggest people spend their money, given that's your answer?
So the way that I run the foundational elements for any marketing scheme to build a fan base is ultimately showcasing a proven piece of content that has already done well organically, typically is what you want to utilize. And you say, okay, that's worked organically. It's going to obviously cut down on the testing on the marketing to see if it's going to optimize, right? So like organically, if it's doing well, it's typically going to do well on ad strategy. Then from there, it's ensuring that ad is the call to action is to get that fan to buy into your community, into your VIP fan list, so that from there, you're getting somebody that has found you on the internet, has never heard of you, has seen now a piece of content that they're like, wow, I love this band. This is pretty cool. And the call to action is to join your community, your VIP fan list, so that now they're going to be part of something, right? And so that's like, it's the same thing as human behavior when if say you were performing at a club and somebody's walking down the street and they hear it and they go, oh, wow, that's cool. Or you're the opener and they're there for the headliner, right? You got to get their attention first and get them to buy into what you're doing. So first off, it's got to be led by a piece of content with a great product, a song, right? It's got to be great. So then from there, it's now giving them the option to now follow you further, right? To now buy into what it is that you're doing as an artist, your journey, and get them to, a good qualifier for that is someone that is willing to join your VIP fan list, to give it their name, their phone number, their email, their location, and their preferred streaming platform. I want those data points personally. So then from there, that person is now, you have the ability to recommunicate with them any way that you need, whether it's DM, text message, or email. So that's what my whole focus is on, is capturing those people. And especially if you're doing it within a radius of a club that you're trying to sell out, because ultimately, if you build a big enough fan list from those people that have seen your music and they're the concert going age and they're within the radius of that club, you're going to be able to get anywhere from 30 to 50% of that fan list to your show. And so that's where you're going to make a return on investment right there. Because now if you have the ability to work out a door deal, whether it's an 80-20 after expenses, set to 70-30 even at 50-50, you're still going to recoup. And it's not going to be as profitable. The margin isn't there, but you're still going to actually recoup. And now you know that you're starting off with that foundational fan base for show 2 in that market. And that's how you can continue to stack and build. I've been able to do this, and I figured the strategy out before there was the ability to run ads on social media. I figured it out with MySpace. So I initially did this manually. Instead of running an ad and hitting all that audience, I would go and look at the zip code radius from the venue we wanted to sell out as Prospect Hill, and we would sit there and we would add 500 people a day within that radius, and then we would message all 500 and then comment on all 500 of their walls every single day, because 500 was the max. So then we figured out we can do those other actions. So we were doing 1,500 manual actions a day. And because of that, we had hundreds of thousands of followers on MySpace or friends, millions of streams, and an inbox full of people that we were communicating with. And within 2 years, we went from bringing like 50 people in our backyard to 1,200.
So I'm going to give you a chance to elaborate more on the journey that you've had, because you've had kind of a crazy ride over the past 25 years of your music journey-ish.
Yeah, I'm 30. I'm 39 now. I just turned 39, and I started the band, the elements of the band, which turned into Prospect Hill when I was in 7th grade with my cousin and my guitar player, Derek. And we started it out in like 7th and 8th grade, and we started jamming with all our buddies. And so it's been that long. Yeah.
Yeah. And back in the day, Prospect Hill was like the cool local rock band that all the other, at least, I'm a couple years younger. So like when my band was coming out, it was like, oh, Prospect Hill's like the cool local band that like everyone was like, you kind of want to be Prospect Hill before you want to be like all the other huge like Breaking Benjamins, right? And so I heard of you for like years, and then all of a sudden 20 fucking years later, I bump into you backstage at a Breaking Benjamin Stain concert, right? And so, and you're talking to me about this cool platform you have, Fan Flowy, and the importance of monetize your audience, but also getting fan data. So, give people like a couple minute backstory into like you and like Prospect Hill, and then leading up to where you are now with Fan Flowy, just so you have the context of like why you know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Ultimately, I started a band in 7th and 8th grade. Derek was a new kid. I come from Lawrence, Mass. Not very ripe for the rock scene, I'll tell you. Derek and I were like kind of like the only two white kids in class. That's why they stuck him next to me, because he was the new kid. And, it's mostly predominantly like, Puerto Rican Dominican culture where I grew up. So it was like a lot of like bachata and merengue and a lot of like Latino based music. So like, me being in hip hop, really realistically, me being a fan of rock music where I was growing up, it was like I was very limited in my resources to start a band. But I wanted to start a band initially because I'll tell you the initial story that sparked it was my father threw a CD on my bed, and he said, "Hey, check out this CD. I went to high school with this kid. I think you'll like it." And I put it in my CD player and I listened to it, and I was like, "Whoa, you went to high school with this kid?" Like, this is like it just took like what seemed like such a massive undertaking, and like it was so far out of reach, right? You think of bands, you think of LA, you think of New York, and you just think of like it just being so far out of your reach, where now I'm hearing this album and it sounds amazing. It's actually my favorite music I've ever heard right now in this moment as a kid. And my father's telling me he went to high school and he's from Prospect Hill, and I'm like, and it was Godsmack. It was the All Wound Up record before they signed with Universal. It was the initial release of that album before the Godsmack self-titled, and it just it put it into perspective. Like, if he can do it, I can do it, and then it just made it closer, right? It was like, oh wow, this is attainable. It's not unattainable. Like, if somebody from my area that my father knows did this, I can do it. And there was a drum set in the basement. My father played drums his whole life. He was in cover bands, and he's a great drummer. He's he'll play the shit out of Rush and the Who all day for you. He's good. And so I started playing on the drums, and I said I want to start a band. And so I tried to get friends that were playing guitar. My first band member was my cousin Johnny, who's also a business partner of mine with Red 13, and Make Our Music and Fan Flowy. And so he was playing bass at the time, and then I was looking for other members, and Derek was the new kid. I remember they sat him next to me, and I was like, I don't really like this kid. He's kind of, he was like kind of little, he thought he was a little too cool for Lawrence, right? He's like, I'm from Bethune, blah, blah, blah. It was like, whatever. And I was like, okay, whatever, kid. You got a stain on your shirt. And he flips over his notebook, and it has a corn sticker on it. And that's when I was like, whoa, like no one else in this school likes corn. I'm like, you like corn? He's like, oh yeah, I've seen him like 4 times. I was like, oh my God, I love Korn. It's like my favorite band. Them and Godsmack. He's like, oh, I love all them. Oh, I've seen them 3 times. I was like, oh, cool, And I was like, yeah, I'm starting a band. He goes, I'm starting a band too. I'm like, do you want to try out for my band? He's like, yeah. So then he comes to my basement where my drums were, like I think that night or the next day, and he sings Stuck by Limp Bizkit and rips it. The kid's going mental in my basement, screaming. I'm like, you're in my band, And so like he was the singer for a little while, and then he learned how to play guitar. So then he started playing guitar. Johnny was in the band, and then we just started going through all different friends, and we started a band at the time in high school, because then we ended up going to Bethune High. I moved, and we started a band called Panacea, and we became like the biggest band in high school. There was like 5, 6 bands, and because of like, I think it was just because of like we're just constantly like talking about it and getting people to the shows. We were pulling like 100 people to the VFW and packing it. Like I have footage of it. It's so crazy. Like watching back, and it's like I could see all the kids from high school. And there's like I think honestly there's probably like 200 people in that, and I'll send you a copy of it because it's so cool. It's like 200 people in the VFW in Methuen, and they're all there, and we're rocking out, and we're on the floor with them, and it just kept progressing, and then we went through singers, and then ultimately, we landed as the band Prospect Hill with a lead singer called Jeremy Conrad Woods. And so from there, we started actually like getting momentum on MySpace. And so we were using MySpace to grow the band. We were doing all those things I was saying earlier. And so we started growing the fan base to a level where, we were having 50 people show up to our shows, to the bars and the clubs, those 100 kids. And then all of a sudden it was like, then we had to transition to the clubs, and obviously there was a disconnect there because our friends couldn't get in. So then we had to start building an older fan base, and then MySpace started doing it. And I remember we were playing an opening for other bands, and we were selling like 100 tickets ourselves. And we were so young that we weren't even allowed to like integrate with the rest of the club. We had to stay in a little corral. We had to get like X's on our hands. And we were playing with some of the bigger bands that were coming around, like Raw and Nonpoint, it's funny, which are clients of mine now. And
Yeah.
and it was super cool because like we were starting to like get leveled up and start opening for nationals, building a fan base. And then what we were doing on MySpace was ensuring that we were able to sell more tickets. And then eventually we started being able to put people, we realized that, hey, if we could sell these tickets, we could sell them for our own shows. We have no money. Let's start building our own shows and like taking venues and cutting out the promoter. And we started becoming the promoter and putting on bands to open for us. And we would take a venue that didn't have even a sound system, and we would bring in our own sound system. And so we were making 100% of the cash. We would do our own ticketing, everything. And so then we were starting to make like thousands of dollars putting together our own show, selling $15 tickets to like 200 people, right? And then all of a sudden, 400 people, then 500 people. And then within 2 years, we were doing 1,200 people charting at Billboard, hitting the Heat Seekers charts, #1, Billboard album sales, starting to get attention. We were #1 on MySpace. We were on top 10 unsigned bands. We started getting basically scouted by every major label. Avery Littman at Universal, Mike Flynn at Sony at Sony Records, Meredith Chin over at Red Bull. Everybody was starting to like interact with us and starting to watch us and show up to our shows. And we were scheduling showcases in New York. Bill McCarthy over at Indigo. Like everybody was interested in what we were doing. And then we started to expand. We, at one point we ended up moving on from another singer. We brought on Adam Fithian, and then then everything just started, catapulting. Like we basically did another record. That record actually featured Tony Ramola from Godsmack, which is pretty cool. We brought him on. He played guitar on it. He did one of the songs with us. He ripped a solo on our song called SOE. And then from there, we started breaking out regionally because now we were making money in our hometown to now press and market ourselves into other venues and start to grow ourselves there. And so now we were able to build out the market. So now not only were we drawing in, Boston and Southern New Hampshire and Worcester, but now we're doing Rhode Island, Connecticut, upstate New York City, Southern Maine, Northern Maine, Central Maine. And then now we started to go down south, and we started hitting all the markets and all the way down to Florida. And we go up and down Florida, all the East Coast multiple times a year. And then we found a promoter in the Midwest that loved us. And so then he broke us out into the Midwest, and we started crushing out there. And in between, we started getting picked up by radio stations. We had, program directors that fell in love with what we were doing. So they would start putting us on regular rotation, and that would just enhance everything we were doing. So like, we were at one time like being played by stations in Iowa and Maine and Florida. And like before we even left the state, it was pretty crazy, but that was all through the marketing on MySpace. And so that started building out demand. And I remember, the first time we got asked to play in a market where we were on full rotation was Bangor, Maine. And we got asked to play the Bangor, Maine State Fair. And we headlined it. And while we're playing, there's like 1,500 people in front of us that are all singing the words back to us. And we've never been there before, Andrew. It was insane. And I remember like
and this is back then before. So like MySpace existed, but it was kind of an alien concept back then. Like nowadays, that's people blow up on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, and they go a place and everyone knows the words. But back then, that was kind of a weird phenomenon.
Yeah. And it was really crazy because like they're singing our songs back to us. And like I remember my guitar player, Derek, turning around being like, holy shit, like what is going on? And I'm like, oh my God, like this is amazing. And then, and just like every like story along the way of growing as a band, right? There's so many pitfalls that we hit. We've hit every single one, I'll tell you. With like we know where all the landmines are because we've literally blown our legs off along the way multiple times, right? I don't even know how I have a limb. So we that night we stayed after 3 hours after the show, signed every piece of merchandise, sold out of every piece of merchandise, hung out with all the fans. That's what we always did. We were always very engaged with the fans. We'd hang out. We'd become like, hey, they're our family, and that was like one of the things that helped us. But that was a Sunday. And then on Monday, that station that was playing us like 8 times a day got sold, and we got pulled off the station.
Damn.
So we have a lot of those stories. It's funny. Like there's been.
I remember you were telling me about the label deal you guys had that fell through because like the guy like left the company or something. Or
yeah,
something
there's
even more dramatic.
Yeah, that's a little further down the road in the story, but it's like we've literally had every problem that you can imagine happen to us, from like the station getting sold to somebody dying that we were working on like a deal with, to another station playing the hell out of us down in Mississippi. We go and play a show on a Tuesday, play in front of 600 people. 3 weeks later, the format changes to classic rock. We're pulled off. We get offered a deal from this label, and then all of a sudden, they fire their whole rock staff at Universal Records and get rid of all of their rock bands except for Godsmack. Every other band gets pulled aside, and they're like, sorry, guys, rock's on its way out. Even though you guys are doing well, we just see the trend, Like, we've gone through all the stages, and then signing a deal to then getting our song added to all these different radio stations on Impact Day. All of a sudden, the radio team gets fired, and our $50,000 budget to our singles gone overnight. And we have a song that's at radio by itself with no team behind it, no budget. It still hits top 40 at mainstream and, top 50 at active, but it was supposed to be a top 5 and a life-changing song. But because of the marketing infrastructure is gone, we had a rug pull basically in the middle of the marketing, So like, we've gone through all the things and we've seen all the problems. And so I think that's like one of the edges that my team has, because we're all musicians that are touring. We're still currently active. Like, we're all still playing in bands. We're still active. My other business partner, Jim Foster, he was signed to the Beastie Boys, Grand Royal Records. Like, there's a lot of history in regards to, like, we've been through it,
So for, let's say someone was watching this and they're like, I'm in, let's just say, a rock metal band, just because that's what you have the most experience with, right? They want to be able to start playing shows and kind of build up the way you did, and like start playing some small gigs and then build up over time, and also build their audience online on streaming platforms. What do you think the best kind of path forward is, like, in terms of where should they spend their money? Where should they spend their time? Because you did it from a very like kind of fan reach out way, right? You were like person to person building up this fan base kind of like manually, right? But what would you suggest nowadays?
Well, we were doing it with MySpace by like that hand-to-hand combat. And then what I was also doing is another element that we were ahead on understanding that text message marketing was so massive, because I was selling cell phones at the time through AT&T. So I always had a BlackBerry, right? So, and at the time you could do mass text messages to your whole list on BlackBerry. So what I would do is I would get fans' phone numbers, and then I would do mass blasts to all of them about ticket sales. And that's how I would personally sell like 200 tickets myself, just from this list that I just kept building and building and building of text message marketing. Hey, what's up? I got tickets for the next show. Are you coming? I'll come meet you right now to buy. And so that's what I did. So like, it was like outreach. So like, the outreach is almost like the paid ad that we were doing on MySpace. And then from there, we were getting them into a funnel where I would communicate with them further through text message and email. And so that's basically the systems that I set up through Fan Flowy, which is our platform that mimics exactly what my strategy was. But now you don't have to do everything manually. Now there's a way to do it on an automated front, where you're having targeted marketing to, an audience that is interested in bands that sound like you within the radius of the club that you're trying to sell out. And then you're getting their information, their email, their phone number, preferred streaming platform name, all that, location. And then from there, there's a whole nurturing system to get them to take all those actions. But then eventually, in the meantime of getting them to your show, you're going to get them to a merch funnel. You're going to start getting them to spend money, so that now you can liquidate some of that ad money that you're spending at the top of the funnel, right? Then you're going to, and also too, it qualifies them as a super fan. Someone that's willing to buy a piece of merchandise within 2 days of learning about you is probably a good chance that they're eventually going to get a tattoo of your band on their body, is the way I look at it, like, and that's a good indicator that you're a real band. I tell every band, until you have somebody that has a tattoo of your logo or your lyrics on your body, you're not a real band yet, And so, and then ultimately from there, along the way of getting them to your show, you can get them to take all these other actions, which then is to grow your Spotify. Get them in there. Obviously, my biggest call to action with Spotify, and I know you understand this, is I want to see the follower count grow, because that is what's going to increase your release radar pool for the next release. So you want to make sure that your follower count is growing in between those releases, so that release radar pool is bigger, so that the chances of all that data coming in over that weekend of that first release is increased, because there's a bigger pool of people there. And obviously, if you're doing the ad strategy that we're doing, these people are the ones that are most likely to listen past 30 seconds. Save the song and add it to their playlist. So that popularity score on the back end of the algorithm that it's looking for is higher. And that's why every single artist we work with our strategy, and if we have at least 30 days to 60-day lead in on that release without any playlisting, we're going to end up getting that Spotify algorithmic score high over the course of the weekend. And it basically transitions that song right into radio and Discover Weekly.
To dive into, I guess, when you're targeting people locally who live around the place you're trying to play shows, and you're trying to get them for streaming too, but you're essentially sending them to a landing page where they opt in first,
and then I can get them to do everything
first.
Yes,
and then you try to get them to stream. So you're not doing the whole sending people to a landing page and getting them to jump to a streaming platform. It's send them to a landing page, get their information, then go to a streaming platform.
Yes, the only time I'll do those conversion ads on the Spotify is if they have additional budget over my foundational budget is there. Because first, I need to build a list of real fans that are coming in that we can communicate with, because we can get them to take every action. You send them to Spotify, they're gone, right? You don't know if you can't reconnect to them, you can't text them, you can't email them, you can't talk to them. So I want to make sure, especially when a band is starting to build their first foundational fans, they need 1,000-man army. They need real people that they can communicate with and get them to take the actions that are needed in order to continue to trigger the social media algorithms and to purchase your merch and to show up at your shows. So that's the army you need to build first. Then from there, we can run conversion ads on top of that. What I like to do is on the release week, I'll run those conversion ads to a new audience and existing audience to just reinforce and make sure that they're coming through. So I'll set up two ad strategies. And then what I'll do on top of that is I'll run that conversion ad, obviously over the course of that week or a month, but ideally I like to do it in a week and smash as many of them as I can within that full budget. Obviously it depends on what their budget is, right? So it's like the more money, then you can do it over the course of the month. The less money, I want to just smash it all because I want to consolidate all that data within a week. So I do that. And that mostly when I'm doing any type of ads, when I'm realistically trying to just capture the people that we've already driven into the funnel to then take that secondary action. But ultimately, because of the automation systems we have set up, we have a setup where we automate a forever pre-save link through our system as well. We have it built in that will go out to your fan list. So like ideally, all right, so for instance, I'll tell you this is pretty cool. So we have an artist, her name's Mackenzie Lee, came to Sean and I, and she was like, I want to work with you guys. Can you help me write and produce songs? I've never written a song. I've never released a song, but I'm a good singer and I want some help. And we were like, because we have, for some reason, we have an attraction from like female pop singers and we've done really well in that genre for some reason as rock guys. And so we were like, and we write pop songs. Sean and I can write girl pop songs all day, right? And so we were like, okay, fine. We'll just
look at Max Martin. He comes from like a metal background, but he's the number one. He's written for like Backstreet Boys, Justin Timberlake, Britney Spears, Katy Perry, and he's this like middle-aged dude from a metal band, right?
Yeah, so it's funny because like we've always like thought of ourselves as like the next Max Martin and Rami team, Sean and I. And Rami is now one of our business partners on another project. Like it's pretty cool.
Oh, cool.
So Rami's like one of my homies now, and we just worked. Recently, the past couple of years, he flew out to work with us. He came out here and we did some work in our Birmingham studio for the project that we're all involved in. That eventually was going to have a huge release. But it's cool. But yeah, that's what we've always said too. It's like exactly. So the Max Martin story is kind of our story in regards. So for some reason, pop artists come to us. So she came to us and we helped her. We taught her how to write some songs. We did a bunch of demos, and then we got one of her songs finished. We had another producer help because we were too busy. And then what we did was in anticipation of her first single, right? What we did was she didn't have any content, she didn't have any music, right? So what we did was I wanted to start building her fan base in anticipation of that to ensure that she had a big release on that weekend. So I had her, because she's a great singer and she can play piano. So I said, go behind the piano, take your phone, and film yourself doing like 7 covers, right? Send them over to us. They just raw, it doesn't have to be crazy. Just make sure it's lined and lit well, lined up and framed up and send it over. So we put them out on her Instagram. We see which ones do organically well. We take those, we press them into an ad targeting audience of what her next single is going to sound like. And If you're a fan of this artist, you're going to like me. Hey, my name's Mackenzie Lee. I'm a new pop artist. Here's a cover of me doing this. I have my first release coming out. It's my debut. And if you want to join my VIP fan list to be the first to hear it, join my community and help me, while on my rise, join the fan list.
Yeah.
So we ran that for about like 3 to 4 months, and we gained just under 500 fans into her sign up. So what we did was then, leading up to the release, we did an announcement to that whole list with an automated email and text message with the pre-save link to all of them, with the announcement, single artwork, all the story about the song. Then we did another one the week before. Then we did another one the day before. And then we did one the day of the release. And literally on that weekend, she ended up getting like 200 streams on that Friday, 150 streams on the Saturday, and like 100 streams on the Sunday. So like that whole list, basically enough of them drove into that without any other ads going into that. It was just us. We already spent the money on the ads. We already had the fan base built, and we drove them all over there and concentrated over that weekend and got them all there to do it. And we already had pre-saves obviously too. So it was good. And then on Monday, it hits the radio algorithm. Her first song, Andrew. She doesn't even know what it's like. She's so spoiled. I tell her all the time because she's only worked with us. So she doesn't know what it's like to put out a song and then see nothing.
And have it get like less than 100 streams.
So her song has been out now just around 60 days, and she's got about 50,000 streams. The thing's averaging 500 streams a day in the algorithm now. It's crushing. It's a good song. And that's the other part.
It's your first song, and you're not even doing like a crazy marketing push or anything. You're just kind of leveraging all the growth you did in that pre-marketing and building a fan base, email list. I'm guessing there was SMS as well collected.
Yep.
Just because
SMS. Well, it was all part of the SMS. Yeah. So the text message marketing is the biggest conversion rate. So you want to make sure that you utilize those only on the releases and on the show marketing within the radius of that. You don't want to burn that one out because people will get annoyed and hit stop. So you want to make sure that the email is consistent. So it's basically that nurture funnel. It's like keeping that band top of mind, keeping that artist top of mind, getting the information out from that. If they're a true fan, they're going to read it and they're going to dive in. But then the passive fans, that text message marketing still will work. So you don't want to burn that one out. So we use that very sparingly on the releases and on the show marketing. So, and it works really well. I just actually did one for Prospect Hill because we're basically kind of starting over, not obviously, in the market that we've been playing. Like you said, we kept those shows going at Hampton Beach. So we still draw anywhere from like 350 to 500 a night there. But now we're building back into our old markets. And so, for instance, I had to build that same list, and I built it out in Southern Maine, and we just had, I ran it. It was a kind of a last minute show because I wanted to basically have one culminate our writing and production retreat we just did. So I booked a show at the end of it on a Friday in Windham, Maine, which is outside of Portland. And so I built out the list. So we had about 140 people that I drove in through our ad strategy, and we had about 75 people turn out at a $20 ticket. So it was actually about,
nice.
It was a little over half of that list showed up.
Right. Yeah.
And so those conversion numbers work really well. Even if you're, and so what I always do is I base the conversions at 20% of that list will turn out. Just at worst case scenario, 20%, but it's more like 40 to 50 realistically, which is great.
Gotcha.
So when I do all the math conversions and I'm going, okay, we have 6 markets for this band we need to grow, right? And how many people do we need to get in the club built off of what they currently pull? What's the difference?
Yeah.
This is how many we need on that list in order to convert X amount of people to grow into that audience. How much does that cost? Then I know what the equation is. When we're doing more of a detailed target audience to within a radius of a club, it gets a little bit more expensive, as you know, right? If you're doing a broad national campaign, you can keep it down to anywhere from like 20 cents to $1, depending on the genre. And then when you go obviously into the tighter geographic target, it gets anywhere from like $2.50 to $4. But if you're selling a $15 ticket or a $20 ticket and you do the math and you understand, okay, yeah, I might not net as much on that first show, but that all those people you gained from the first show are coming to the second show. So now the second show is going to have your bigger margin. It's going to have a bigger draw.
Right. Now, in terms of the warming up and the list engagement you're doing, you get someone on the list. How many times are they getting hit up via email or SMS over the course of like the first month or for the first year even? I don't know. Like, kind of tell us a little bit about what these automations are doing to warm up that fan?
So, like, the whole goal is to get them to take all the actions that are needed in order to grow you, right? So the first one is like, I want to get them all into a community so that they're all meeting each other. So the fans start to interact and build and feel like they're part of something. And then from there, I want to get them into a merchandise funnel. I want to start now liquidating it, because I know that if someone has never heard this band, within 2 days, I know I can get at least 7 to 15 out of 100 people, so 7 to 15% conversion rate, to buy something. And then I can get them, that same person, 50% of them will buy the second item offered to them in that funnel. And then 75% of those people will buy the third item. So now you're anywhere from selling anywhere from a $9.99 bundle to a $60 bundle. And then we have systems in place where we can do all drop shipment inside of that funnel through Printful on demand, or through like vinyl and CD on demand systems that we have built out as well. So we can offer those in the funnel. And then we have a whole
this vinyl on demand, is that a Elastistage or something? Is that the company, or is there someone else?
There's another company we're using, and we've tested a couple of them out and gone through their API integrations to see which ones work. And this one that we have right now, we tested out the product, and the product was great. Like, I love the sound of it. It's a good quality product, and that matters. You don't make as much margin on it, but ultimately you're not spending money up front. So a band that's just growing, you need ways to make money without coming out of pocket up front. And then once you build an actual established fan base, then you can invest in the stock and what you know is selling to make higher margins. You want to grow it accordingly to how big your fan base is growing. And I always want to make sure that every dollar is being spent from an artist that's just growing from zero or growing from, still a low number, to make sure that every dollar is going into acquiring a real fan that we know we can get to buy, show up to your show, and stream your music. So then from there, we're getting them, we're getting them to the latest release. We want them to stream the hell out of the latest release based off of how they stream. So if it's an Apple streaming fan, they're going to get all Apple streaming links from here on out, always. If it's Spotify, all Spotify. Pandora, all Pandora. And all the call to actions are going to be associated with how you would subscribe to that platform. So if it's Spotify, we want you to follow Spotify. If it's Apple, we want you to favorite it. If it's Pandora, we want you to add the station. If it's Spotify, YouTube, we want you to subscribe. So like everything is in line with what the call to action is based off the platform. So we're speaking to them in the language that they understand. And then from there, there's more nurturing sequences that go out every week to keep them top of mind, that dig in, and we give stories of past catalog releases. So we highlight songs, we highlight albums, we give them a story about it, give them an understanding of, what the song was about, or where you recorded it, or a funny story around it. We build out all these for all of our artists. The platform actually builds them automatically once they answer all of our questions, and it just creates all of the emails for them, which is really cool, right? And then they just proof it and give us the thumbs up, or we make the edits. And then from there, we actually do Q&As on each one of the band members or the artist themselves, if it's just an artist. So then now they get to learn and dive deeper into each one of the artists. So every week they're getting like a past catalog, or they're getting a Q&A. And so it's cool. So now we're taking somebody that was a passive fan that just found them on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, and now driving them into the funnel. So now they become a super fan at the end of it. And then from there, we're setting them up for the next release. So now we have more of these people set up, and there's automation set up for the next release. So once you launch your new release inside of Fan Flowy, it'll start the automations to your existing list. And so that'll start sending them all automations leading up to that release. And then we have another setup from there for the shows. So if you have a show, then there's all the marketing for that as well.
Now, for SMS marketing, you mentioned how the big issue is you don't want to burn the list, because it's a much more intrusive type of marketing. It's blowing up someone's phone versus an email that is usually a silent notification. But that's also why SMS is such a great open rate, like usually 95, 100%. How often would you say is a good rate for people to send out emails versus SMS?
Emails, you can send out an email weekly. On text message, you want to make those ones count for when you're sending out a release. So if you're marketing a release, the initial announcement of that release, maybe the day before, and then the day of the release on the text message. And then if you have a show coming up, maybe a month before the show, and then a week before the show, and then the day before the show. But you can send one of those, in retrospect, an email every week, ultimately too, and they won't care about that. They won't unsubscribe. They don't care. It's passive. But on the text message side, you're going to see a higher opt-out rate on SMS because it is more intrusive. So you just want to make sure. But the thing is too, it's also a good qualifier, to the ones that are willing to take those SMS messages and actually respond to you. A lot of them will respond. And those are the qualifications. I tag those people. The ones that respond to text messages get an engagement tag of a higher engagement, a fan. And so that is so once you have a fan that has these engagement scores that I calculate based off of what they're engaging with on regards to your communications with them, and they're also a buyer, that's how many super fans that you have is what I look at. Especially if
that makes sense.
Yes.
Because if they're replying to your text message, I mean, assuming it's not, fuck you, leave me alone. Assuming it's like, oh, sweet, or like, I can't wait till the songs come out, or I'm going to be there at the show. That's way better than if they just read it and then come, because like that means they're wanting to have that kind of two-way relationship.
Exactly.
Which means they have a relationship with you. It's not just like you're a product. They view you as like an important part of their lives in some way. And as capitalistic as this sounds, there's ways you can utilize that, right? Like you can make sure that you offer VIP experiences that fan in terms of shows. You can sell
subscription based
enough of those fans, subscription based.
Yep.
Yeah, like Patreon, not platinum, like deluxe editions of merch bundles, like a vinyl with like some crazy custom thing, right? If you have 100 fans that will like spend dough on stuff, it kind of opens the doors for doing a lot funner stuff merch wise. Is there any like kind of last minute advice or things you want to leave the people with?
I would say, the most important piece of growing a project, growing a band, growing a pop project, a hip hop project, at the end of the day, the foundational element is the product. The songs have to be great. It makes the marketing a lot easier and the cost per acquisition of a fan a lot cheaper, right? So make sure, and one song is better than 10. One great song is better than 10. And when you're trying to establish yourselves, because you can use that one song as an evergreen fan magnet is what I call it. And that will drive in new audience. Eventually, once you have enough audience, you've got to nurture them and you need to get into a reoccurring, obviously release cycle. Ideally, it's like you get to a quality level production, you start building the fan base around that. And then once you have the demand, then you get into a system where you can continue to build a song of that level of production and you can put one out every 5 to 8 weeks. 5 weeks is the most ideal because we both know that the release rate drops off after 4. And if you want to continue to milk that algorithm, and you could start waterfalling the releases where you're putting out song 1, and then you put out song 2 week 5 with song 1, then you put out song 3 with 1, 2, and 3 on, and that's how I, really grow bands that are just starting out or building. And that is like, and then making sure that the ad strategies are there, not only to build your Spotify, but build your fan base in general. Like, yes, building your Spotify is great. Once you get around 50,000 followers is the number that really matters. Monthly listeners fluctuate based off the playlist you're on and with whether or not you're on a release cycle. But if you have 50,000 followers, from what I've seen across all the artists that I've worked with, when you hit that number and you have at least 30 to 50 releases out, you're generating anywhere between 50,000 to 150,000 annually off your streaming. Because that amount of people are going to dictate, what around the numbers that are needed in order to generate that amount of revenue. So that seems to be the sweet spot. So your goal should be obviously growing a strong fan list and then building that fan list and driving them to the streaming platforms, but also ensuring that you can get a return on investment by driving them into a venue where you can monetize the ticket sales. And that's where you're going to get the big jump of revenue,
Yeah.
So,
and some people might probably going to leave comments like, the numbers sound crazy that you could make that much money for that many like monthly listeners or followers or whatever on Spotify. But I know people with 50,000 monthly listeners who make $100,000 a year from their music. Yeah. It's not because of the streaming, right? The streaming might be, I don't know what the math is going to come, but let's say it's $5,000 a year, $10,000 a year, whatever. It's going to be a small chunk of it. But the reality is they're just done a really good job at monetizing their audience and engaging them and selling, like doing Kickstarters and doing limited edition merch and doing Patreons and playing shows. And, if you can sell out a couple hundred people at a venue and do that regularly, it's like you can make a ton of money, even with a pretty small audience, what appears to be a small audience on streaming,
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't know any artist that doesn't have a 50,000 monthly listener base that isn't at least making $100,000 a year as a project. It just doesn't equate otherwise, unless it's fake.
Absolutely, man. Well, where can people find more about you? We're gonna have links down below. But yeah,
Yeah,
where should they go?
I mean, there's a lot of links that attach to me. So first and foremost, obviously, we started the story off with Prospect Hill. If you want to check out the band, prospecthillband.com. We're on Spotify. We're on YouTube. We're everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of it. And then there's my company, Red 13 Studios. You can search red13studios.com. That website's more focused around all the video content we do, all the music videos, live content, brand content. And then now we have our whole infrastructure for the marketing, which is, our community-based systems that we have for bringing artists and producers and music community together, which is Make Our Music. And that's really the top of the company, really. That's like the umbrella. And then we have our tech platform that's part of that, which is called Fan Flowy. So there's makeourmusic.com, and then there's fanflowy.com. Fan Flowy is like really the tech and driver behind all of the foundational marketing that we're utilizing for all of our artists that we market, including my own band and Sean's band, Lansdowne, and ultimately, we have a whole infrastructure of how to help artists no matter where they are and what level they are, whether you're a band just starting out or you're Godsmack. We have a resource and have the ability to enhance what you're doing, right? And then there's, one of the things I'm pretty proud of is we're going to be launching a book. I think you and I spoke about that. So that's going to be being released soon too. Sean and I wrote it, and that'll be coming out. And yeah, so, we got a lot going on, and we're always looking to help artists that are on the grind, that are looking to put the focus on really building a fan base. That's really what we focus on.
Sweet, man. Well, all your links, or probably all of them, will be down below. So click those ones. There'll at least be most of them. I think we'll probably actually can get all of them on there too. Yeah. But thanks for coming on, Mark.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andrew. Thanks for being my neighbor. By the way, Andrew's right down the street from me. I could probably throw a baseball at him. We found that out too. So yeah, it was really great. It's always great connecting with you and speaking with you. You're one of the few guys out there on the internet that I'm like, okay, what he's saying is he's not full of shit. So and I do a lot of the stuff that you do on a lot of, obviously I do them in different succession of when I start some of the strategy you use based off of where the artist is at. But ultimately I still use the same strategies you use. So I know they work,
Thanks, dude. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.